Hi, I'm Paul Tripp. I'm the global head of coaching at AceUp. How are you?
Good. It's so wonderful to be here with you, Paul.
So I want to start off here. You've got 1 million followers on LinkedIn. Your thought leadership has been featured in New York Times, Economic Times of India, Wall Street Journal, Fortune, Harvard Business Review, MIT Sloan, and Inc. And this morning as I was preparing for this interview, I was thinking it's one thing to know you have something to say to the world, and it's another thing to give yourself permission to say it. When did you realize, oh, I have to give myself permission, I'm ready?
I think it comes from feedback, which is something that it's one of my favorite topics in the world. So you're right in automatically identifying that I may not always have the confidence in whether what I share will be valuable, and I never want to share something out there that is wasting people's time. However, I remember when I first started writing pieces, it was because I had all these insights from these gatherings that I was convening with CEOs and leaders and influencers. And I thought, if we have these amazing insights, who else can also benefit from these, right? And so started writing up pieces. But before every piece goes out there, I would test it relentlessly with potential readers. Many of those include my students because we know that 18 to 22-year-olds, their attention span is a lot shorter and they are a lot tougher critics. And so with that, I started testing every piece. And based on their feedback, I would say, okay, what resonates, what doesn't, what needs to be clarified, and refine each piece before it goes out. And that type of feedback is what gave me the confidence that by the time it goes out there, it will resonate. On LinkedIn, um, where I started a differentiating aspect of my posts is that I love doing 1 to 2 minute interviews. And that's because when LinkedIn first gave influencers the video tool, it was meant for us to share our wisdom. And I thought, what if I'm turning the camera around instead with those who are next to me, like the Paul Tripps of the world? If we were here in person, I'll probably turn my camera on you and say, oh, let's get some coaching tips from Paul. And from there, thought, okay, if this one interview from this person standing next to me, this leader or student, it's something that helps me, then let me share it out and it can help the world. The launch book, we write books not because we have answers, but because we're desperately searching for answers to questions that we have. So that book is a love song to all those people who have shared their insights and wisdom with me on launching. So that's the source of my confidence that it's been tested to have value. Therefore, by the time it goes out there, I know it will have value. And two, if it's something that I believe in and it helps me, it's an insight, then let me share that with the world because it may help others out there too.
You've just taught us all a valuable lesson, and LinkedIn with 1 million users validates it, is that when you want to share something powerful, it's from the perspective of how can it benefit others, and it's in
Yes.
service of others. That's what I heard you say.
Yes, there's a line that I hold dear in my heart. The reader is the hero of every book, every post. The audience is the hero of every podcast, every video. It's all about the audience and the reader, not
Mm.
about us.
Mm, great. So I've got a few questions for some more insight here then to hear what the audience may need to hear. And the first is really around sharing your approach. Can you share your approach on how individuals can really identify and leverage their unique opportunities or strengths within the workplace?
I love that question because it was one in which I struggled with myself,
Mm,
right? I could see in everyone else they're extraordinary. But I had doubts about what do I bring to the table? What's my differentiating contribution? And as I explore this question, what I discovered is where the greatest insights come from, how I discover my superpowers or these innate differentiating strengths is probably the less mega word, mega definition for superpowers is it's with others. We need others to help us see what is our blind spot. Isn't that the part of the benefits of coaching? So we all have blind spots, no matter how self-aware we are, because every time the context changes, there's a new blind spot, right? And so I think about the things that make us extraordinary are usually our biggest blind spots. For example, what makes you extraordinary to the rest of us is just your everyday normal, Paul. And so you walk around not knowing what is it that makes you extraordinary. We don't think our way out of blind spots. We actually need others to help us see. So a first step in identifying our superpowers, we may know there's things we do that energize us, that gets us excited, that we can't help but spend time on, even if we're not being paid for it, right? They just give us joy. But asking others, whether it's someone who knows us deeply, like a family member or a friend or a mentor or a peer, hey, I'm trying to learn what is it that I should be doubling down on? Can you help me understand what are some of the ways that I contribute differently to the team, to the family? What have you seen me do that you can just see me light up and be so excited about? Right. And there we start getting a feel for things we may not be aware of that we should perhaps be doubling down on. Now, there's no specific list of superpowers because at the end of the day, it's that dynamism between the person we're speaking with and working with and us. But we can start seeing patterns around general categories, and that can guide us towards, if you are an amazing people connector, but you may not realize that's something different, you now know, wow, this is something different. Maybe I should do that a little bit more.
You raised such an interesting point. I was recently in a team meeting where I could feel myself, right, experiencing emotion. And I asked a teammate, hey, could you observe me in this meeting and give me feedback afterward? Because I can't really see it in the moment.
Mm.
And so, your comment about recognizing our blind spots really resonates.
Well, and Paul, what you did was incredibly courageous because anytime we ask, when we believe and hold something so dear, and we ask for feedback around it, we can expect, well, there might be critical feedback, which is also something that is really hard.
Feedback, yeah.
But almost as hard is also accepting positive, constructive feedback. That's the one I find people, especially high achievers, we believe for like a second. You laugh. I've hit a no.
It's true. And so in team settings, I just shared an example of, I can get kajibble-jabbled sometimes, right? My emotions, I can feel them coming up. And I'm wondering for you, what are the key factors that drive innovation within teams? Blind spot feedback, could be one, but what are others? What are other key factors that drive innovation?
I am so glad you're hitting on the idea of teams. And here I wanted to put a point out there. Even though we're talking about coaching, there's external coaches and internal coaches, but every leader now also has to be a leader coach. And so for those who are listening, if you think, well, my job isn't a coach, but I am the manager of this team, well, think again. Because in today's world, we can't just expect to be captains of the team. We also have to be coaches of the team because part of the job of great leaders is to also develop those who come after us, develop other great leaders. So, and then when we look at the idea of team, I have written this HBR piece on team coaching, and it's not meant to be, wow, how do we coach a team from externally as a professional coach? It's meant from the point of view of the leader coach. because a lot of times when we're, say, mentoring and or coaching our team as a leader, we are doing it one-on-one. But there's opportunities for us to look at them and say, how do we leverage this collective? Because a team is the core unit. The team, not individual, is now the core unit of success in an uncertain, complex world, right? And so in terms of innovation, think about two things. Trust. You can't innovate without trust. You can sustainably and keep on innovating without trust. So how do we build that trust? One is having this culture of feedback, both positive and positive constructive, and also critical constructive, right? Because we have to see feedback only as it's data points, and what's true today doesn't have to be true 6 months from now. That's a beauty. Data for this point in time, if we have that data, then we can do something with it and evolve and change. And then the second is on trust. In today's world, what gets me so much about how we are leading today is people are expecting us to be human leaders. And we are expected then to lead the whole person, not just, this function that is a part of them, but the whole person coming in. And so with that, this whole person, emotions are a big part of that. Not being emotional, but understanding and leveraging the emotions, the hopes, the fears, or the psychological battles and the obstacles that might get in the way of us moving forward with innovation, which is really change. And change is scary, right?
You bring up such a great point about recognizing the emotion of the team, the one voice of the team.
Yes.
What does that one voice say? Is it a voice in unison? Is it a voice in opposition? And how the team lead can really help identify that.
Yeah, because when we're innovating, when we're changing, in any change, there's going to be wins and losses, right? And that makes it scary. So we actually have to ferry our people through all those emotions, not just well, look, this is going to be on paper, all these benefits. And isn't this great? Imagine telling the person driving the horse carriage, wow, we're going to evolve to a car company. Isn't this great? Because it'll do great things for the company and help us innovate. And a person driving the car carriage that they're known for, they're thinking for the company, not for me. So we have to then think about how do we help them be a better, perhaps car driver, better car mechanic.
Yeah, recognize their role in the shift, right?
Yeah.
And how they're going to contribute moving forward.
Oh, Paul, I love what you just said. Recognize their role in the shift. I'm gonna steal that.
You said it, I just paraphrased it. I am curious, what is one of the most impactful lessons you've learned in coaching over this last year that has had an impact on your kind of philosophical approach to either teams or, your own individual coaching practice?
So I think oftentimes when we are working with a individual leader, we tend to see things from that leader's perspective because we're working with that leader. However, throughout my coaching practice, what I've discovered is context matters. And the context, so think about it in terms of superpowers. Being meticulous can be a superpower. If you are, say, in a legal environment that is dotting the I's and crossing every T's. But that meticulousness may be kryptonite if you're in an organization that values speed, sometimes at the trade-off of it doesn't have to be 100%, 75% will do. So that context matters. That's why some people can be incredibly successful in one company and not so successful in another company, right? So one is context, context, context. So in my work, I love to understand. So if I'm not only the team that they're working with, and also be in communications to be able to get data, with the permission of the leader, of course. But it's also, if it's a public company, I watch earnings. I read their annual reports because that's the operating context in which they are leading. Right?
Mm.
The other thing is something I learned from Coach Mike Krzyzewski, one of the greatest leaders of our time. For a long time, he was the head coach for our Duke men's basketball team. And I have the pleasure of working with him in my other role as the executive director of the Coach K Leadership and Ethics Center. And he is also the way he coaches, the way he leads transcends the sporting world. That's why business leaders love also learning from him. And one of the things I learned from him very early on is he would say, it's not enough for them to know it. They have to feel it and they have to believe it.
Mm.
So feel, that's the emotion piece. And when you think about it, you already have, by the time the players get to him, whether they are professional NBA players now playing with him in the Olympics, or they are collegiate players who came in at the top of their game from across the country and the world, it's the technique is there. So much of whether we can get to that next level is what's in our heads. Do we believe it? Do we feel it? And so I think a lot about back to the emotions piece. That has to be a part of it. And we are now, I'm finishing up co-authoring a book called Making Leaders that is about what those whom Coach K has coached and mentored, what leadership lesson did they learn from him and how are they applying it? And with all these interviews, a consistent theme is how much he thinks about the whole person and how much he makes sure they know he cares about them and he's invested in them. Because that's where leadership and influence truly comes in.
You know, you've just taken us for full circle because I started with the question of, how did you know it, right? And feel it and believe it in your mind. And you just used an example of the coach who
Mhm.
said, they have to know it before they can go to the next level. And clearly you've done that in your own practice. You're a leader in the industry. I really want to thank you for your expertise here and your guidance for all of us and for putting the audience first.
Oh, thank you so much, Paul. And thank you and AceUp for all the amazing human-centered leadership work and research that you all have done. I am so happy to team up with you for these newsletters. And it's what's needed, this
Mhm.
human-centered approach
Yeah.
for our times.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.